On today's episode, the Chicago Blackhawks officially have two top 20 selections in the NHL Draft for the second consecutive year. Thank you very much, Tampa Bay.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2, and make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey, so that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And just a quick reminder to everyone watching this on YouTube right now, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much. If you're listening through an audio platform here today, make sure that you're downloading all of those latest episodes, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be. It's all 100% free. It won't cost you anything. You can also go and rate and review the show as well. I'd greatly appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know, today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Put on your game face and download Monopoly Go right now for free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. To kick things off here today with the Tampa Bay Lightning officially getting bounced from the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs in 5 games to the hands of the Florida Panthers. That means that the Blackhawks officially receive another top 20 selection from the Bolts as part of the Brandon Hagel trade from a couple of years ago. And my, oh my, so many things have gone down involving the Blackhawks since Brandon Hagel got traded. That literally feels like an eternity ago. I actually, when I was prepping today's episode, I just assumed that was from 2021. No, that was actually only just over 2 years ago that Brandon Hagel was traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But like I said, kind of feels like it was an eternity ago. But yes, now the Blackhawks have two top 20 selections for the second consecutive year in the NHL Draft. Last year, that obviously turned into Connor Bedard, and then Oliver Moore somehow, some way fell to number 19 and went on to have a phenomenal freshman campaign with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I'll actually be talking a little bit more about another freshman for Minnesota this past season during segment 3. Make sure to stay tuned for that point in today's episode. But the Blackhawks are hoping to get a pretty similar outcome as to what they had last year from this year's NHL Draft lottery. Hopefully, they'll have the first overall pick for the second consecutive year, and they could even have the 19th overall pick as well for the second year in a row, too, because I believe if the Vegas Golden Knights reach the conference finals, that pick from Tampa will move up from number 20 to number 19 for the Blackhawks. I think it actually could have turned into number 18 as well if the New York Islanders had advanced to the conference finals, but we obviously know they are eliminated as well by the hands of the Carolina Hurricanes. But yeah, another opportunity for the Blackhawks to stockpile their to stock up in their prospect pool a little bit more here in terms of like what this does for the Blackhawks organization. Other than that, it really gives them options. And I alluded to this in a conversation that I actually had yesterday with JD Young, the host of Locked On Sharks. He's already posted that conversation on the Locked On Sharks platform, so you can go tune into that if you want to. I am going to be posting it tomorrow morning, but I talked to JD about how if the Blackhawks don't wind up with the number 1 overall selection, we know if they get number 1, it's going to be Macklin Celebrini. Easy peasy, no real decision there. But if they wind up with number 2 or number 3, they're going to have a lot of options, but it helps them out by having another top 20 pick. And I think specifically in terms of what they want to do with right-handed defensemen, because I really believe one of those 2 picks from the Blackhawks, apologies for that, are going to be a right-handed defenseman, but all of the RHDs slated to go in the top 10, top 12 as of right now, if you will, are more offensive-minded defensemen. And given that the Blackhawks already have Seth Jones, an offensive defenseman, on the right-hand side, they also have Kevin Korchinski in the prospect pool as well. He's known for his offensive abilities. And Sam Rinzel is another right-handed defenseman who's a good skater and is offensive-minded. So I do wonder if the Blackhawks would like to add maybe a little bit more of a rugged, big-bodied right-handed defenseman in this year's draft. And if that is the case, I kind of expect them to wait to take a right-handed defenseman until that second first-round selection that they have from Tampa Bay. But they also could still take a right-handed defenseman in that top 10 if they think that's the player with the highest upside. But I just think it gives them options now. I really think adding another winger to the prospect pool could be a good thing for this group, a guy with top 6 upside, and maybe a guy with some size too. I think a Caden Lindstrom in this year's draft is really interesting because of his power forward mold, and I think the Blackhawks could use someone like that in their forward group. So by having another top 20 selection here from Tampa Bay, I think it opens the options even more than they already were for the Blackhawks. So that's kind of what this pick means to them from the Lightning, as well as just, like I said, continuing to stock up on prospects here and getting ready to take that next step in the rebuild. But I did also want to go and take a look back at this Brandon Hagel trade from March of 2022. Now that we have a little bit better of an understanding as what the finalized deal looks like. Again, we don't know what the player is that the Blackhawks are going to be taking with that second pick from Tampa. We don't even know exactly what number it's going to be yet, but again, we have a pretty good idea of how it's all shaping up here now. For Tampa Bay, what they got out of this deal, obviously they got Brandon Hagel. They got a 2022 4th-round pick, which was Kenny Connors. They traded that pick to Los Angeles. And then they also have a 2024 4th-round pick this year, which is the 99th overall selection from Chicago. Well, the Blackhawks received Taylor Radish, who obviously got off to a real promising start to his Blackhawks tenure before kind of throwing up all over himself this year, unfortunately. They also got Boris Kachuk, who is no longer part of the organization. He was placed on waivers and claimed by the Ottawa Senators, a decision I personally didn't like. But then they also received a 2023 first-round pick, which turned into Oliver Moore at number 19, and now a 2021st, which we know is going to be top 20 as well. And kind of breaking down this deal, how it looks 2 years removed from the actual negotiations itself, I think everyone is kind of going to agree this was a really good trade for both sides. For Tampa Bay, I mean, Brandon Hagel has just absolutely blossomed for them these last couple of seasons. Last year, in his first full campaign with the Lightning, he tallied 64 points in 81 games and then absolutely burst onto the scene this year with 75 points, 26 goals, 49 assists in 82 games, while being a staple of their top 6, getting opportunities with Braden Point on the top line, playing on the power play, playing on the penalty kill. Brandon Hagel is one of the best all-around hockey players in the NHL, and he's got an absolute bargain of a contract. So Tampa Bay made out pretty good here in this deal, even though they haven't had playoff success with Brandon Hagel yet. They got another puzzle piece there in Tampa, while the Blackhawks, they got Oliver Moore, who is a really high-end prospect because of his skating ability, and I think shaping up to be a really good second-line center of the future behind Connor Bedard for the Blackhawks. And then we'll see what ends up happening with this top 20 selection. But I think the biggest thing here for the Blackhawks, what they got out of this trade that maybe people don't realize, is they got the opportunity to be bad enough to get Connor Bedard. Because if they had Brandon Hagel on this team the last couple of years, odds are Brandon Hagel would have helped make the Blackhawks be too good for their own good. It's the same reasoning why they traded Patrick Kane, the same reasoning why they traded Alex DeBrincat. They were going to make the Blackhawks too good to get a potential franchise-changing player in the NHL draft. You unfortunately just need to be one of those bottom teams to get a franchise-altering type of player. So that's one thing that the Blackhawks really got from this deal, as well as Oliver Moore, a high-end prospect. Hopefully another one in this year's draft. And then Taylor Radish. Look, I know he was disappointing, and it's a contract year for him. Real bad time for him to have a down season like he did. I personally, though, would be willing to give him another chance, just given the Blackhawks situation. We know they're not going to be contending for the Stanley Cup playoffs this upcoming season. It just feels like another good opportunity to give Taylor Radish a chance to show himself. And if he does throw up all over himself again, so be it. At least we know for sure what type of player he is at that point. So I think it just winds up being a good trade for both sides here. Tampa Bay gets a real good top six player on one of the best bargain contracts in the NHL. Well, the Blackhawks got an opportunity to tank, completely rebuild their prospect pool, and came away with Oliver Moore and another top 20 pick here. So still a deal, in my opinion, that works out well for both sides, but it's going to be very fun to continue to look back at this Brandon Hagel trade as more and more years get removed from the actual deal going down, and just following how Oliver Moore's career goes for the Blackhawks, whoever this next top 20 selection, how their career is going to go as well, what happens with Taylor Radish, and how Tampa Bay fares with Brandon Hagel as long as he's signed on there. It's going to make for a very intriguing conversation. I'm sure I'll be going back and talking about this deal for a long, long time, but pretty good for the Blackhawks side of things. Another top 20 selection for the second consecutive year from the Tampa Bay Lightning. All right, there is a quick look back at the Brandon Hagel trade from prior to the 2022 deadline. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I will get into a defensive outlook for the Blackhawks moving forward. But first, I got to talk to you all about Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime, and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure if you or your team can pull out a win, but that's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. And it's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime, and with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies, and play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, and charge other players rent for your iconic properties. And you can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and win tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go right now for free on the App Store or Google Play. The Locked On NFL mock draft is available now. I know it's already gone down, but I think it's still interesting to go back and go through all of the six episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the Locked On experts picked for every NFL franchise, along with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle for this upcoming season. Go and check it out. The Locked On NFL mock draft is available right now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube, and also wherever you listen to your podcasts. Segment 2, yesterday, I went through a offensive outlook at the Chicago Blackhawks. I talked about what went wrong with the offense and the power play this year, and also looked ahead to who is coming back in the forward group, what needs to be addressed for improvements in that area, and all that good stuff. Well, today, we'll be getting into the defensive side of things, and then in the next episode, not going to be coming out tomorrow because that's when I'm going to be dropping my show with JD Young. I believe I'll probably have it come out on Saturday, but as you guessed, then the next episode, I'll go over the goaltending. But getting into the Blackhawks defense and outlook. First, though, what happened this year for the 2023-2024 season? Like the offense, defense wasn't very good for the Blackhawks either. However, I think the difference here is, I think leading up to this season, we anticipated the team was really going to struggle on the defensive side of things. It was going to be more of a struggle for the Blackhawks defensively than it was going to be for them offensively. And that's why I predicted, I thought this Blackhawks team was going to be a fun one to watch, because I knew on the defensive side of things, given you have Alex Vlasic, Wyatt Kaiser, Kevin Korchinski, I mean, your entire left side of your defense is essentially rookies here. I knew it was going to be a struggle for the Blackhawks on that side of the ice, but I thought the offense would be able to pick it up and at least give them some entertaining 6-4 or 6-3 losses, but that obviously didn't end up happening. But yeah, I just envisioned it being a struggle for the Blackhawks defense this year because of their youth, because of their lack of depth. The third pairing was really a huge question mark with Nikita Zaitsev being the third guy in the lineup there. I didn't think it was going to be very pretty for the Blackhawks defensively this season. However, where I think they really went wrong, or where things really kind of got out of control and became unfixable, was when Connor Murphy went down. And to be fair, I didn't think he was very good this year when he was healthy, and I honestly haven't thought Connor Murphy's been very good these last couple of years when healthy. And I really do wonder if the Blackhawks, I know he signed on for 2 more years, but I just don't think he's a top four defenseman. But you could get away with filling those gaps with Connor Murphy being out there with Kevin Korchinski as the second defensive pairing. Where things I think really went wrong is when the Blackhawks got dealt with injuries. Seth Jones got hurt, Connor Murphy got hurt, Nikita Zaitsev's hurt, and it's like, oh my goodness here. And then Kevin Korchinski's playing for 2 months with Jacob Megna. And credit to Jacob. I mean, he stepped in after being claimed off waivers and got off to a really good start to his Blackhawks tenure for like 2-3 weeks there. Like, he was handling his own, but that wasn't going to last forever. And towards the last 2 months, Jacob Megna kind of came back down to earth. And it was clear that Kevin Korchinski, like, this is just not a defensive partner you want a 19-year-old, a young, undersized, offensive-minded defenseman playing with night in and night out. So it put the Blackhawks in a really tough situation. And that's why it's even more impressive to me that Alex Vlasic stepped up and played top pairing minutes all year the way that he did with Seth Jones. Like, really, really impressive stuff, having to immediately be one of the leaders on the back end at 22 years of age. But yeah, just this Blackhawks defense, the lack of depth to pair with the young guys, it's really concerning. And Connor Murphy's injuries are a problem certainly as well, because outside of the shortened 56-game COVID season in 2021, Connor Murphy hasn't played 60 or more games. He's only done that once in his last 5 full seasons as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks, man. Like, he's just injury prone year in and year out, and playing 50 games a year and playing lackluster hockey at 50 games a year. It just isn't going to cut it. So I do wonder. I personally think the biggest need for this Blackhawks defense in the offseason is they just need another true top 4 right-handed defenseman. Connor Murphy can do it from time to time, but he's just not consistent, and he hasn't been on the ice consistently enough. And I just don't think Murphy is going to cut it at this time, at this age. And we just need more reliable guys to pair up with some of our youngsters who are going to continue to come up to the NHL these next couple of years. So it's going to be a process for the Blackhawks on the defensive side of things until that maturation really kicks in for other guys. You know, hopefully Wyatt Kaiser will be able to develop, Ethan Del Mastro, Kevin Korchinski as well, of course. Hopefully they'll be able to develop the same way that Alex Vlasic has, but it's going to be a process. It's not going to change overnight on the back end for the Chicago Blackhawks. But I do think this decor, assuming they add another right-handed defensive piece, I do think they're going to be better than they were this past season. I mean, that's not really saying much. They were 29th in the NHL in goals against and 27th on the penalty kill as well. There weren't really any strengths of this defense all year long. But in terms of who we know is coming back, Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic, Kevin Korchinski, and Connor Murphy are all under contract. I don't envision either Jared Tenorti nor Nikita Zaitsev getting re-signed. Jacob Megna, I do think, is interesting, not because I think he could be like a top 6 guy on the right-hand side, but I do think he could kind of be that 7th defenseman for the Blackhawks, so they don't have to play every game and don't have to worry about him watching from the press box for like 2 consecutive weeks. He kind of is what he is at this point in time. I do wonder if Isaac Phillips could potentially be in that role next year. Not saying that Megna is going to get re-signed. I just think he's the most likely of the 3 free agents on the back end, along with Jared Tenorti and Nikita Zaitsev. Also, you have to keep in mind, Wyatt Kaiser is certainly going to be pushing to make the NHL roster once again. Ethan Del Mastro, an AHL All-Star in his first year of professional hockey. I think the next step for him is to make the Blackhawks out of camp. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do think he's ready for that. And then Isaac Phillips is still in the mix as well, although he is in a contract year along with Louis Crevier, and I'm really curious as to what the Blackhawks are going to do there. Probably going to have another conversation with Ice Hogs broadcaster Mike Folta on that topic before July 1st this year, but there are going to be more guys trying to step onto the scene, but I don't exactly know if that's going to take away like a roster spot from anybody, or like if that would prevent the Blackhawks from going out and getting another defenseman in the offseason. I think they absolutely have to add someone on the right-hand side to kind of sturdy things up a little bit. And also, they just don't have right-handed defensemen in the organization. I mean, other than Louis Crevier and Seth Jones and Connor Murphy, there literally aren't any. So I think you got to go and get an RHD if you're the Blackhawks this year. I also want to go through some potential way too early pairings for an outlook on the Blackhawks defense here. Jones and Vlasic, I really envision that being the top pairing of the future for the Blackhawks. Really interested to see if they're going to play together at the World Championship for Team USA. There's also going to be a very interesting discussion around Kevin Korchinski. Could be back in the NHL next year, absolutely, but it's going to depend on how his training camp goes, because now he is going to be eligible to play in the AHL for the Rockford Ice Hogs, and I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world for him now that the Blackhawks have that option as opposed to not having it this past season when he was only 19. It was either OHL or NHL for Mr. Kevin Korchinski. So I'm really curious. He could be back with Connor Murphy on the second pairing. I also, though, wouldn't be surprised to see Wyatt Kaiser potentially in that spot to open up the year if Kevin Korchinski, in fact, does start things off next fall with the Rockford Ice Hogs. And then on the left side of things, I think Ethan Del Mastro is ready to be an NHLer, man. He was the guy on the back end, kind of like Alex Vlasic was for Rockford a year ago. It feels like that's the natural next step in his development and his progression to go and be an NHL defenseman. But it's all going to come down to how well he fares in training camp next year. And then the third pairing right-handed defenseman is a mystery. Yeah, you could maybe move Wyatt Kaiser on his offside there and have him and Korch in the lineup. Could have Isaac Phillips there potentially. But we've heard Kyle Davidson say the Blackhawks want to progress next year. They want to be better. I don't know if you roll out the same decor and expect things to be all that much better when there's still so much youth back there. So that's why I think it's really crucial for the Blackhawks to go and add another right-handed defenseman because, yes, another year removed, another year of development for a lot of these guys, but still probably not ready to be capable enough defensive core altogether just because they're so young. And also Connor Murphy has so many question marks. So there's my defensive outlook for the Chicago Blackhawks moving forward and what went wrong this year. Didn't have a lot of size, didn't have a lot of physicality in front of their own net. I think the youth showed itself, a lot of breakdowns in their own zone, but those things are going to happen when you have a lot of young defensemen on the ice. So hopefully the Blackhawks will shore things up on that end of the ice a little bit more heading into next season. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I wrap things up, still have to talk about Sam Rinzel being named the Minnesota Golden Gophers Freshman of the Year. But first, I got to talk about the fine folks over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in both the NBA and NHL. Baseball is also in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. And right now, new customers can get $150, win or lose, guaranteed $150. And yes, you can use those bonus bets to bet on everything from slap shots throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs to home runs all across Major League ballparks to slam dunks on the way to the NBA championship, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Go and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now and to make your first bet an automatic win. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you're a new customer, you'll get $150 worth of bonus bets. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, please make sure to smash that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel if you're watching me on this video right here, right now. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I just realized I still have the FanDuel ad pulled up. Doy. Free coverage there for FanDuel. Segment 3. Pardon me. Before I wrap things up here, let you all go enjoy the rest of your Thursdays. I still have to be sure. That just absolutely butchered it. I wanted to be sure to still bring up that Blackhawks 2022 first round pick, the 25th overall selection in that year's draft, Sam Rinzel, was officially named Minnesota's Rookie of the Year as the recipient of the Frank Pond Award earlier this week. And Sam Rinzel had a mighty fine freshman campaign with the Golden Gophers. Got to watch him along with Oliver Moore. I believe they were roommates together. I love them establishing that chemistry early on. And they were both focal points of this Golden Gophers team that had a really strong season together. For Rinzel, he was a top 4 defenseman for Minnesota basically right out of the gate as a freshman, and played in all 39 games for them this year, tallied 2 goals and 26 assists for 28 points. He nearly had more assists than he had in 58 USHL games the year prior. So clearly the development has been going in the right direction for Rinzel. He was also part of the Team USA squad that won the gold medal at this year's World Juniors, and is going to be going back to Minnesota for his sophomore campaign along with Oliver Moore. But I'm very excited to see what the future is going to hold with Sam Rinzel, because when the Blackhawks drafted him, he was one of the youngest players in the draft. We knew that he was going to play another year in the USHL before even becoming a freshman in college. And really the only thing, or the main point about Sam Rinzel, was that there's just so much runway in his game, because at 17 and now at 18 years old, 6'4", 200-pound right-handed defenseman that can skate like a gazelle and has offensive-minded instincts. And you just don't see a whole lot of those in NHL drafts. So I really like the Blackhawks taking a chance on a player like Sam Rinzel. It obviously worked out for them really well, because they took on Peter Mrazek's contract to get that pick, and we know how well Peter Mrazek has fared for them in net. So really good chance and risk taken there by Blackhawks general manager Kyle Davidson. And like I said, from that leap from playing in his final year of the USHL to seeing what he just did for Minnesota as a freshman, yes, the development is very clear there with Sam Rinzel, and very stoked to see him going back to the Golden Gophers, where he very well could be a top pairing guy on that team, the quarterback for the top power play unit, and also just another opportunity for him to kind of continue to round out his game and get better on the defensive side of things, because that's really where he has to make the most strides. Makes great reads out there, good first passes, can skate the puck out of the defensive zone into the offensive zone. Like I said, is a quarterback for the Golden Gophers power play at a young age, but we saw it time and time in college hockey this year, but I thought it was pretty evident as well at the World Juniors. Just some poor reads, some poor decisions, bad turnovers by Sam Rinzel. He's still got to make some strides on the defensive side of things, but he's probably, outside of goaltenders, I feel like he's the prospect right here, right now, the Blackhawks are willing to be the most patient with, just because they know he's going to be a little bit of a project. But if he puts it all together, he has the capabilities of being a special right-handed defenseman. So I like them being patient with Sam Rinzel, and love to see him in his first year of college hockey have a big-time year for the Golden Gophers, a focal point of a lot of their success this year. And yeah, could come back and play an even bigger role, I envision, along with Oliver Moore. And oh yeah, Sam Rinzel, doesn't turn 20 years old until later this summer in June. So, yes, still lots of runway there. 6'4", like I said, is going to have to gain some weight and get a little bit stronger and better defensively. He's only about a $190 is what he's listed at right here, right now, but a long way to go for Sam Rinzel. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays 3 years at Minnesota. Now, if things go well for him this year, he absolutely could forego his final 2 years of eligibility. But I don't think it would be the craziest thing in the world if the Blackhawks just allowed him to marinate and ripen in college hockey with the Golden Gophers. It worked really well for him this first season. We'll see how it goes for him as a sophomore when he returns to Minnesota next season. But congratulations to Sam Rinzel for being named Minnesota's Frank Pond Award winner this year. I wonder if Oliver Moore was throwing him a few jabs for stealing that one away from him, but it's all good, all friendly conversation. Excited for both of those Golden Gophers prospects in the future for the Chicago Blackhawks. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get all of the latest episodes as soon as they're uploaded each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Find me on YouTube at Jack Bushman2. Make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your days. I hope you all enjoy that chat that I have with JD Young coming your way early tomorrow morning. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.